Hey guys! So I wanted to do a video and talk quickly about kitchen utensils. I wanted to just go through all the different tools that I use on a daily basis in my cooking, and my hope is that this would be helpful to you if you are, less comfortable in the kitchen, you're maybe new to cooking and you're not quite sure what to get to start with. So I'm just going to go through all of my equipment, and I'm not by any means saying that you have to go out and buy all this stuff. But hopefully if I kind of talk about it and explain to you what I use it for, you'll get a little sense of, okay, I want to try those, those three things. I'll start there. So that's my hope. I do have a blog post on my website that talks about some utensils, small appliances, pots and pans too. So that might be helpful as well. But I wanted to do something in person and just hope that explaining it a little bit would be more helpful. Now, this is because I teach a lot of cooking classes, and the first thing I do when I'm in someone's home teaching a lesson is we go through their kitchen and figure out, what they're missing or what they really don't need versus what they really do need. And it's often, it makes a big difference because from a functional perspective, there's definitely equipment that's silly and unnecessary, and then there's other equipment that can make your cooking life a whole lot easier. So I don't want this video to go on and on and on. So I'm just going to kind of zip through this stuff. If there's anything I forget to say or that you're not clear on, please just reach out to me. All my different types of contact information is on my website, social media, email, etc. So I'm going to start with chef knives. They come in a bunch of different sizes. So this is 10 inches. It's totally unnecessary and large. I got this in culinary school when I had no idea what I was doing. I like to think that I was having short girl syndrome and needed a bigger knife because I'm hardly over 5 feet tall. I hardly ever use this. It's totally unnecessary. This one is the knife that I use every single day. It's 7 inches. This is the perfect size for me. If you're less familiar with using a chef knife, less comfortable in the kitchen, this is your first time going out to buy a bigger sharp knife like this, I would recommend more in the range of a 6-inch. It's just easier to manage. You're less likely to remove a finger. That's the size I would recommend if you're a little newer to a chef knife. I would also then say, in addition to a chef knife, you want to have a little paring knife. This is great for, chopping up small vegetables, cutting cherry tomatoes in half. I use this a lot to remove the stems from kale or collard greens. So as far as knives go, you want to have a bigger chef knife. That's going to be for chopping all your vegetables, cutting meat, and then your small paring knife. I'm going to move on to spatulas now. Spatulas come in all different shapes and sizes and materials. My favorite, and I have a ton of these, are these silicone heat-resistant spatulas. They are very functional. They're very easy to work with. They're super easy to hold. I'm small, like I just mentioned, so utensils that are large drive me crazy. So like I said, really easy to work with. They scrape out pans really well. They scrape out bowls really well. You're not wasting, you're not wasting ingredients because your spatula can't get into the corner of something and scoop it out. Like I said, it just cooking, baking, anything. I have a ton of these. They come in all different sizes. This is a small one. This is a bigger one. This one is crooked because it's old. There's ones in between. You can buy a little set. They're not very expensive. You can even just look for them on Amazon. So if you want like a multi-purpose set of spatulas and you don't really need to buy anything else, these are your guys. They also, because they're silicone, they're not going to scratch your nonstick pan. They're not going to scratch if you have an enamel-coated pot or something like a Dutch oven. Again, not going to scratch. You don't want to use stainless steel in those type of pots or pans. If you're using a stainless steel pot or pan, you can most certainly use any type of spatula. But I just think instead of having 6 different types of spatulas, just have these and all your bases are covered. I would say my second favorite would be wood. It's natural, there isn't any like funky material that you're using or anything like that. Again, this is good for a non-stick surface or an enamel-coated Dutch oven. I have a couple of these. I don't use them as much as the silicone ones, but it's nice to have a couple. The other one I wanted to show you is this I use for fish. So this is a heat-resistant plastic. They do also come in metal. You'll often see this type. They're wide and flat. And this is so if you're scooping, like picture a fillet of fish, you're scooping it, and it's easier to kind of scoop it all up in one piece, and you're less likely to break the fillet of fish. So I have this on hand for that as well. So those are kind of your bare minimum basics for spatulas. Getting a little tongue-tied here. Okay, so I want to talk quickly about whisks. Same as spatulas, they come in all different sizes. This is kind of a medium-ish one, and this is a small one. They come in bigger sizes. I have no use for them. Even in all the different types of cooking I do, I just don't really need a large whisk. So as far as what I use these for, if I'm going to make like a quick sauce in a pan, if I'm baking and you're whisking eggs, or you want to mix together your wet ingredients, these are great. They're also good if you have your dry ingredients for a baking recipe. I use these to mix the dry ingredients together because it incorporates everything easily, and it also will break up the clumps if there's clumps of flour. And then when you're combining wet and dry ingredients together, you also use your whisk. Again, helps break up any clumps. So you don't necessarily need two. I would say maybe just have a medium one. I think mainly just because I'm cooking so much, I have quite a few of these kind of small and medium ones. Basting brush. I would pretty strongly recommend having one of these. They come in, this one is silicone. They also come in the natural fiber, with natural fiber bristles, and those look more like, literally like a paintbrush. So these are really great for roasting, especially roasting different types of meat, and especially meat that tends to dry out. So leaner cuts of meat like chicken breast or pork tenderloin or something like that. Now the purpose would be that you want to be basting that meat from the juices that run out below the meat. You collect in the pan, you baste those, or you could have a marinade on the side, and while it's roasting you baste it periodically, and this helps impart flavor for sure, but also helps maintain moisture in the meat. If I go into someone's house and forget to bring this with me, inevitably I'm irritated at myself. And I'm saying that because I realize how much I use it. It's just a really great way to keep something moist, keep flavor. I just think that they're really great. So my one comment on silicone versus the natural bristles, these ones are really easy to clean. You throw them in the dishwasher, they get super clean. The natural bristles, I wouldn't recommend putting in the dishwasher. You need to clean it by hand. Over time, the bristles will start to fall out, and it's not as easy to get them clean. I would say that's the main difference. I do have a couple of each, just because that's what I've collected over the years. But if you just want one, and you just don't want to think about having to hand wash something, I would just get one of these. Tongs. I think I have, I don't know, 6 of these. You don't need 6, you just need one. Think of these literally as an extension of your hands. Now, from a cooking perspective, you don't want to be sticking your hands into your hot cooking food, but from a functional perspective, your hands would be so much faster to mix stuff, right? You grab something, you need to flip it over, you need to move something. So these are doing exactly that. I use these if I'm searing anything on the stovetop, if I have something in the oven that, you know, you cook halfway and then you need to flip it over. If you're roasting a whole chicken, some people like to rotate their chickens halfway through, like maybe you start it, you know, breast side down and then you flip it halfway through. These you just grab the chicken body and you can just flip it over. So really functional. I definitely recommend having, you know, one set of these. You don't need a bunch. Microplanes. Again, come in all different sizes. So this one is a larger grate. So if you're not sure what a microplane is, they're essentially a very fine grater. Like, you know, a cheese grater or a box grater. These are like that, but much smaller. So this one is a little bit larger. I don't love this one. I would say it's better for maybe grating cheese, but if you were gonna grate a lemon on this, the lemon zest comes out pretty big, and I usually want my lemon zest to be pretty fine. This one is my favorite. It's the perfect size for everything. This one's a little too small. I got this one because, again, as a personal chef, I'm carrying stuff around and going into people's homes. So I got this because it was small, just to limit the amount of stuff I was carrying around. But it's curved. So from a functional perspective, I just don't love the shape. I just don't think it makes too much sense. So again, there's no need to have 3. Just get this one. That's my recommendation. You can grate fresh ginger root, turmeric root, garlic, citrus like I said, cheese like I said. So this is really wonderful. It's a nice way to add flavor into dishes. Okay, kitchen thermometer. You really want to have one of these, especially if you're less familiar with cooking meat, fish, different types of protein like that. I always get questions. How do I know my piece of salmon is done? How do I know my chicken is done? If you're not used to, feeling a piece of fish to test if it's done based on firmness or any of that, this is just your fail-safe. There's no question. So you can look up online, if you just Googled like temperatures for, done temperature for fish or cooked temperature for chicken, you can find out the temperatures. So like chicken needs to be 165, for example, to be considered done. Now for me, I'm cooking for other people. So, it's one thing to serve myself something undercooked, but I most certainly don't want to serve my client something undercooked. So I use a thermometer all the time just because I'm wanting to be really careful and making sure, I'm doing everything right. I recommend digital. This one is digital. The ones that look like a little clock dial, they can get bumped out of whack easily, and then they have to be recalibrated, which you can certainly look up how to do. I don't trust them. After I've had a dial thermometer for a couple months, I usually start to feel like, I wonder if this is accurate. They're also pretty slow. It takes a while for the dial to go up to temperature, and these are pretty quick. So I recommend these. I want to say this was maybe 20 bucks. They come in different ranges of expense. You don't need to get like a $50 thermometer. It's totally unnecessary, but don't get one that's like $5 because you get what you pay for and it will probably break pretty quickly. And just the one quick comment, you'll notice if you're not familiar with these thermometers, you'll notice the tip is very skinny and then it gets fatter. Some thermometers will have, it's the same thickness all the way down, but they have a little dent or it looks like a little puncture hole on the side, and that's to indicate how far the thermometer needs to get inserted into the piece of meat or whatever you're cooking to read the temperature accurately. So that's just a little piece of information so you know. Okay, moving on. A juicer. I wouldn't say this is number one on your list of priorities. It does make, squeezing juice out of a lemon or a lime a little easier. I would say lemons more so than limes because lemon seeds tend to be, those little jerks who jump into your food when you're squeezing a lemon, right? So this just kind of helps avoid that by squeezing the juice through and keeping the seeds in. I use my hands a lot. This does extract, because of the leverage, you're able to extract more juice from the lemon than I can actually squeeze with my hands. And like I said, it just kind of helps the seeds stay contained so you're not chasing after a seed in your food. But it's by no means as important as like a good chef knife or a kitchen thermometer or something like that. So this is something I'd say decide for yourself if you want it. Kitchen peeler probably seems pretty self-explanatory, right? But a lot of people often don't have them. So peeling your vegetables, peeling your carrots, peeling your butternut squash, all that stuff. Some of these peelers actually, like this brand, it's the OXO brand, they actually work backwards and forwards, which is just like kind of a useless piece of information, but if you were for any reason in a really big rush and you had to peel like a carrot, you can actually kind of do this and it'll peel back and forth. I just thought I'd mention that, I don't know why. Strainers. Again, come in a bunch of different sizes. I have this one just if I've made like a quick pan sauce or something on the oven, on the stove, and I just want to strain it and get out any like clumps or anything like that. This is perfect. Or if there's something I've cooked that's just a small little amount and I need to strain it, that size is great. The mesh on this is also finer than this one. So you can get a larger strainer and it'll have the finer holes. So it'll give you a finer strain, if I'm making sense with what I'm saying. So this is single mesh. There's also double mesh strainer. So it has 2 layers, and like I said, it makes it finer. It just depends on the brand of what you're buying. You'll just notice if you go into a store and look at a couple different strainers, you'll probably notice that they have bigger size holes or smaller size holes. And let's see. So this one is good like for a sauce or something where you really want to strain something fine. That finer mesh is going to be good for that. But this, if you're just using it to like, you blanch some vegetables and you just want to dump the water out, then, the size of the holes doesn't really matter so much. Quinoa, for example. Quinoa has a tendency to sneak through this strainer. That's what an example of one you would want that's a little finer. I don't know if I'm getting too complicated there with what I'm saying. I would just say start with something that's like this size and just see. Sometimes are you noticing that you feel like, oh man, I only need to strain this tiny amount of sauce and I just dirtied this big piece of equipment. Maybe then you move on and get a smaller one. That's up to you. Okay, last thing is just measuring cups and measuring spoons. For baking, if you like to bake, of course you want to be more accurate with baking, right? Because it matters. So you definitely want to have some measuring spoons. Measuring cups, kind of the same deal, especially for baking. My half cup one is somewhere, but they usually just come in sets. And for me, because I'm often tracking what I'm doing in my recipes that I'm making, I use these a lot. If you're just looking to come home and cook dinner and that kind of thing, I wouldn't say it's so necessary. But if you're less comfortable in the kitchen and you don't really cook just by going, oh, I'll put a little bit of this and a little bit of that, if you're a little more uncomfortable, then having the actual exact measurements to follow, like in a recipe if you're reading it, of course that would be really helpful, right? So the more comfortable you get in the kitchen, you'll start to maybe feel like, oh, I don't quite need my measuring cup because I have a sense for what I want to put in there. But if you're new and you really feel like measuring helps you feel comfortable tackling a recipe, then by all means, you want to use them. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I feel like I was talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I also feel like I just talked for like 6 hours. So I hope this is a little bit helpful. I don't know if this is a really boring video, but I just wanted to do something in person and talk a little bit about, what I use and kind of why, and just hopefully it's a little bit helpful. So I'm going to stop there, and hopefully I'll see you around. Thanks, guys.